Richard Kendall,
Oh, Richard Kendall,
Bill,
Bill Stockard here.
Nancy Wren here, Marcia,
Marcia Allgaier here.
Shelley,
Shelley Reynolds here.
Fran,
Fran McLennan here.
Katie,
Katie Whitby here.
George,
George Meservey here.
Andrea.
Andrea Reed here.
Okay, I think we got everybody. All right, welcome. Okay, the first order of business, I think, is we look at our request for the Community Preservation Committee because they're getting ready to do that now. So right now we have currently still $5,000 from last year toward our education program. And which it says on the original application that we're supposed to use by the end of June. I don't know if that's set in stone or not, but we do have the $5,000 for education. But what else would we like to request this year for the Community Preservation Commission? I'm assuming we would like to do another dose of money for the Affordable Housing Trust. Is that correct?
George, was there a decision about how that was going to run, that it would be coming from the trust from here on out, or they wanted it to come from the trust from here on out?
Yeah, I think last year when the Affordable Housing Committee requested funding be put in the Affordable Housing Trust, there was some confusion as to why the trust board did not request that themselves. So maybe it's just easier for that to be a direct request since they'll be the users of the money.
My question of this, though, is prior to this happening, who's coming, if someone has a request for community preservation, are they coming in front of the trust as well? I mean, as in the past, people have come and asked for money from us and for proposal approval, they came to us. So I don't understand why that wouldn't be the same thing.
So you have a CPC representative from this board. I'm not remember who it is.
Barry Alper.
Barry, okay. And in the past, when there were CPC requests, the CPC committee looked for a recommendation from the Affordable Housing Committee. The only two requests for housing last year came from you, and I think there was a small thing from a private agency. Anyway, they should seek your recommendation, but no CPC. They can act on their own. They don't need your recommendation. But if there are competing projects, perhaps they will seek it again. So let's make sure Barry is aware of past practices.
Well,
Barry
did contact us to ask if to be ready to submit something. He did contact me already, so I don't know if that was his heads up, get something ready to submit. So I don't know. I mean,
So-
this goes back. Fran?
Are we saying that the trust would ask for whatever they want for their housing developments projects, and that we could write a letter of recommendation for their request to CPC supporting it? And then if we wanted something in addition for education or something else under our charge, that we would apply for that separately? Am I hearing that?
That's what I would recommend that you do at this
Okay.
stage. Yes.
Other opinions, thoughts on this?
Looks like Rich is trying to say something.
Nancy, I think last year we wanted to request, or we requested 10,000, we're awarded 5. I think we all came to a decision that we wanted 10, so maybe we can go for the other 5. That was kind of on our side, and then the trust did request whatever CPC money on its own. So it
Are
was
you talking about the
separated.
education? Are you talking about education? We haven't used our $5,000 yet, so I don't know, do they ask, if we haven't used it, can we ask for more money?
Imagine we get
I think they would say, what have you done with the 5,000 we gave you last year before you get any more? I mean, I like the process that Fran described, I think is the way we would go from here on in. It would seem to make sense.
Have the trust request and then we approve, we
We-
not approve, we support.
Certainly support anything that they request, but I would be a little leery of asking for another 5 since we haven't spent what they gave us. And I'm sure their first question would be, what'd you do with the money we gave you last year?
Okay.
Ann has her hand up.
Go ahead.
Nancy,
Yeah,
we have on our agenda to talk about community engagement later in the meeting.
right.
And maybe when we have that conversation, we'll have more of an idea of what we may or may not want to ask for. And we do have another meeting prior to when the deadline is for the community preservation requests that are due. So maybe we could just postpone this conversation to the end of the meeting or to the next meeting.
That's a good suggestion. Let's do that. My communication with Barry made us think that we were going to continue to add money to the trust. That's what I got the impression
Yeah.
from Barry. So that I'm sort of a little thrown by this new idea. So I feel like, you know, we've talked a lot. We talked about this last year on who goes first and who. I feel if we're not encouraging money into the trust, that we've sort of lost our thrust as well, which says that's how we started this whole thing, was to contribute to the trust because we knew how valuable it was. And suddenly we're going to back off and say, okay, you ask for your own money. And somehow I feel like that is giving a different message than we had started before. I doubt that we wouldn't ask for money for the trust because that's what we wanted. But to take that role away from us at this point in time, when we're trying to figure out how things are working, seems to me to be shooting ourselves in the foot in terms of future support for the things that we want to
Yeah.
talk to the town about. So unless there's some new rule that nobody told me about, it seems to me that we should recommend some money for the Affordable Housing Trust. That's what I just really feel that way. I don't know why we would change it. We're not going to stop recommending money. It's not like we're going to say now we don't want to give them any money. We're going to want to give them money. So why wouldn't that be, why wouldn't that just be sensible in terms of the way our two committees are supposed to work together in the future?
Well, at the same time, Nancy, the defined roles are that the trust deals with the money, right? So, and we are supportive in those efforts, and then also, you know, do community engagement and look at other ways to support affordable housing outside of the financial piece. So I do agree with Fran and George, and I think the impression I got last year was the trust would be submitting its own application for funding from CPC, which obviously we can support. And then over and above that, if we want something more for education, I don't think there's a problem with throwing in an application for additional educational resources. We can always withdraw it if we decide we're not going to use our 5,000 this year. But you know, we know what we're going to be using that money for. If it turns out we don't need the full 5,000 or we can't justify getting more, we can always withdraw that application at a later date. But if we miss the deadline, we can't really do that. So I just as a point of clarification, I don't think it's inconsistent with our roles to allow the trust to request their own funding.
Okay,
Just my opinion.
let's let that sit then for a little while until we go through the meeting and maybe some other light will shine somewhere in this group, okay?
Okay.
All right. All right, George, you get a chance to do your updates. I did send out some info. He did send out information, so did I, but if you want to just verbally update us on the next things.
I'm glad to. The first thing was the request to change the inclusionary zoning component of the zoning bylaw, which currently requires that for every development of 10 units or more, at least one of those units must be affordable, capital A affordable. And it actually provides for a bonus unit, so it's really 1 out of 11. So I brought this to the planning board to see if they had some thoughts about increasing the requirements so that it was 1 for every 5 units, it was 1. And also to allow a payment in lieu of providing the actual affordable unit. And, you know, the board felt that the bylaw as was crafted in 2017 and adopted has not been used yet. They don't think that, there's two ways to look at it. This, you're not getting enough housing, or is your bylaw puts some onerous on a developer such that there is no housing developed. There's sort of two sides to it. But they felt that until they had some experience of whether the bylaw was effective, they were not inclined to make a zoning change at this time. They asked me to keep the matter on their running list of potential zoning changes for the community and to bring it up next year. But it was their perspective. They didn't really feel like they wanted to change the bylaw right now.
Did they have an opinion on the fact that there's just not enough acreage, like parcels to build 10, and maybe reducing it would encourage it? I mean, did they not recognize that like the 7 that went in on Cove Road would have had an affordable housing in there if we considered redrafting it?
They didn't talk about the parcel size generally in the town, but they were aware that, that I think they've more considered that if that 7 units had to build an affordable unit, perhaps that project wouldn't get done at all. Now, I know we have differing perspectives about whether that is a good or bad project for the community, but it was a new investment in our downtown, if nothing else.
So in hindsight, what might have happened that didn't would be that the developer could approach the trust for some support to include an affordable unit in a development. Hopefully, maybe that would happen in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, Fran, I think if you have a requirement that a developer has to provide a unit, you've got the leverage there, and I don't know why you'd give up your resources once you've got the leverage to provide units. But if you want extra, certainly a developer can ask for additional money to provide extras.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like that's been an ongoing conversation we've had, George, is that, now they're required to put it in, and we did that to get more units and utilize the private market in establishing those units, because it doesn't come without its benefits. You get an extra unit if you put in the affordable unit. So those were sort of built in. But I agree, if they're going to do over and above the 1 in 10, I think that's a whole nother thing that they could approach the trust about to utilize funds. But to use our money for something they have to do seems counterintuitive to the reason we asked for the inclusionary zoning in the first place.
Right. So the board does have the availability to go out and find residents to petition a zoning change to this effect. If I were in your position, I would consider just letting this ride additional year. We're in a tremendous economic downturn, but we're also in a real estate boom at the same time, which the two don't usually go together, as we know. So maybe the future will be a little clearer come a year from now, and we can revisit this kind of issue. And maybe there are better arguments to be made to the planning board to move this forward. Should I move on, Nancy? Oh, you're muted.
My phone is ringing right now. I'm trying not to hear it. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. 107 Main Street RFP and input in progress. I don't really know what to report to you all. There was a neighborhood meeting, and there were many opinions expressed. A couple of them were fairly negative toward the conceptual plan that's been developed for 107 Main Street. There were some suggestions that the town trust should merely limit itself to 3 or 4 single-family homes on that property. So what we've done, what we're planning to do is we've asked neighbors to put their concerns in writing. The trust will review them on October 20th at their meeting. I believe that's, the 20th. And, decide how we want to go forward. There's certainly more outreach to come here. Knowing that at some point, the Affordable Housing Trust is going to develop that property for affordable housing. It's probably going to be via a 40B development. And right now, the town of Orleans and the townspeople have some say on how it's developed. At some point, we want to put this in the hands of a developer. If it's a nonprofit like a Housing Assistance Corporation or some other, they could do the public vetting of their particular project. We're going to get to the end of what we can talk about theoretically, but I think we need to find the parameters of a project. Is it rental units? Is it ownership? Is it all affordable or some community housing? The kind of densities that the neighborhood can live with. So I think the trust made a really good decision to do some outreach and listen to the residents first off. And we're going to have to do it some more, but we'd like to get sort of boil down all their comments and understand them better by having them in writing, and then have the trust discuss it. So that is the update there, unless there are any questions.
So have you kind of stalled out on the RFP process until we get more feedback?
I have an RFP that's probably 90% ready to issue. So I can issue it at I can finish that up as soon as there's a decision as to direction that comes from the trust that's affirmative and you're ready to go forward. I think we want to do our best to try to make this a project that the neighbors understand and think is beneficial to them. So,
Fran?
Marcia wanted to say something.
Oh, Marcia.
Yeah, I'm a little bit ignorant about this project, so forgive me, but is one of the decisions that have to be made is what is the basic purpose? I mean, is this a elderly or is this a working families? Is that going to be laid out in the RFP such that that decision has to be made before the RFP is issued?
yeah, and that's the kind of decision that we want to make now. And
Okay.
we've done the study to date that these would be all rental units, that up to half of them could be for community housing at up to 100% AMI, because there is some funding out there from the state that works for that. As to family size or elderly limitations, those discussions haven't really been had yet.
So in terms of the target, I mean, is this targeted to elderly, so you'd have smaller units, or is it targeted to families in which you would have more bedrooms? Would that be what has to be, I'm not saying decided in that set in concrete, but guiding the RFP?
Yeah, I think that we want the RFP to have those kinds of,
Right.
those directions spelled out.
Right.
We're going to ride that fine line between prescribing exactly what a developer should do, such that it looks like a public construction project, and letting the developer, just make those decisions. We want to find that place where we get what we need.
Right, because we don't want the developer to decide it's going to be 10 units, they're going to be 2 units, it's going to be all single family, it's going to be all attached. I mean, those have to be set up front, don't they?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fran?
My comment sort of backs up where Marcia is. I was wondering who makes that decision? Is it the trust, or is it the committee, or is it a combined discussion?
The
We're
trust is
still
fun-
working
yeah.
through our guidelines of how we work together, and this is the first time it's come up. So we kind of have to decide.
Yeah, ultimately the housing trust is the owner of the property. So they will have to make the final decision. The extent to which they seek your input,
Okay.
and the extent to which you're willing to do public outreach and go to bat on their behalf is a nice mutually beneficial relationship here. If you have suggestions on how we can make sure the communication is clear, I'd be glad to hear them so we don't miss things along the way.
I think that's the point of this meeting today. Am I muted? Is this meeting is us try to put a handle on this, because I see this is going to be a continuing question for us for the rest of our lives if we don't come up to some kind of a understanding of our role in this developing these kind of places. I don't. We say we're supposed to be education, and then they'll determine everything, and we're not asking the community. We are asking the community, but Fran has mentioned several times. I think actually George mentioned several times, are we going to react project by project, or are we going to do a general education of the town? And I think that's something we should maybe discuss a little bit later, because are we just talking about the idea of affordable housing, or are we going to have any input into each project as it goes along? And that's the question. You know, I am not a power hungry kind of person. I thought that's not myself, but I am a person who likes to talk to people and have some kind of consensus going forward. And that's one of the reasons got further involved in this. And I don't exactly know how we're going to do that if we say one group decides and the other group supports when necessary or when asked. So I think that's our dilemma right now. And I don't have the answer, but there's a lot of people on this committee who have a lot of thoughts, and I think we just have to hash it out. And I wish we were in a room with a brainstorming board and we could actually sit together and really talk and do this, but this will have to do. Marcia?
Oh,
Ma-
let me
you
defer to,
waving?
yeah, somebody else.
Shelley's been waving.
I can't get my other people on here. There we go.
I just
I'm trying-
wanted
there
some
you are.
background. Has it not been the committee that's done the RFP and made these decisions prior to the existence of the trust? And I'm not sure that I understand why that part should change. It seems to me that the trust has a whole lot of other stuff to look at in terms of the financial side when, you know, deciding a project or finding the money to put it together or whatever, but not that they shouldn't be party to the discussion, but it seems to me that the committee is the one that's charged with the oversight of creating affordable housing in town, and that the trust is an arm of that process or a part of that process. But am I wrong in thinking that in terms of putting together an RFP or making decisions about what kind of housing we want in a particular spot, that has not been the committee's job in the past?
I think that has been the committee's job in the past, and I think that's what we're trying to decide. How much do we hold on to in terms of the future? Andrea?
Yeah, I'm dying here. I think if you look at your charges and the paper that Ward and Fran did, I think you have tremendous opportunity here. My understanding, George, you can correct me, or Fran, is that the trust is responsible and is the financial and kind of the buck stops here for individual projects. But the trust, we have no clue. There is no roadmap for all the tools we need to do housing as a community. And since you are advocacy and education, you know, you are the ones who can develop a philosophy and the kind of protocols for how each project manifests. And whether it's just the question that you just raised about the design of the particular project at 107 Main, one of the classic things is what types of housing will fit into and complement the neighborhood. You know, if you look at kind of the form-based code way of operating and looking at neighborhood impacts, you know, you guys really could be the advocacy for the kind of cultural continuance of the area where each housing project develops. And so what's the scale and impact? And you can control and develop the tools that every site goes through. You know, I don't know in terms of the RFP, who holds the money maybe end up with the trust, but you can certainly develop the culture. And then the reaction of the planning board, which is very little, I think, understanding or sympathy at this point for the need. They're thinking about protecting business, but so the two tools you have weren't even part of the discussion. And if you think the planning board is reacting like that, it tells me the untold story that you guys need to get out ahead of in the community. I think you have a ton of work to do. So, I mean, just as a select board, we welcome you taking a lead philosophically, I think.
Marcia?
Well, again, from an outsider point of view, and I was not involved when you didn't have the trust. So, but it would seem to me, as George says, they own the land, they control the money. So from a legal point of view, they need to issue the RFP and sign the contract. But it sounds like that is the trust, needs to say, and here's the process we're going to use to come up with the terms of the RFP and the outlines of the process and the density and the target population, however they want to do it. And I cannot believe they would do anything but say the Affordable Housing Committee's input is absolutely essential to making those decisions. But it seems to me pretty clear it's the trust that owns the property, has the money, issues the RFP, and awards the contract. I don't know how you can get around that, can you?
I don't think you do. I think we are behind the mark, quite frankly. I think we should be leading the conversation with the community. I don't think that should be coming from the trust. I think we should be making recommendations about what we are doing. We make them to the trust, and the trust uses our recommendations to draft the RFP. I think we're behind the mark. I don't think the invitation should have come from the trust. I think we should be doing more to engage and educate and that type of thing. And then we're supposed to be advising. I mean, the Warren article that established this committee, we shall advise, and we're not. So I think that what we really need to talk about is how we're going to engage and how we're going to get that information together in a package to present it to the trust for the time that they need to adapt an RFP to put out to the public. So I think we need to do that sooner than later.
I would agree with what everybody is saying here, but just add one other piece, that when it comes down to an individual project, you can't separate the goals of the project from the money that could be spent, because whatever you recommend needs to be financially feasible. So it really is a joint discussion when it comes down to the individual project.
Going back to Katie, though, what you just said, you say we're behind the mark and we have to do this. You're saying we have to write up something and give it to the trust and they're going to implement it, or who's going to implement it?
I think all we can do is make recommendations. That's our charge. Our charge is to advise, but we don't really have the authority to make any final decisions. I think the guiding principles are guiding principles, but ultimately when the money gets spent and the RFP gets published, that's a trust decision. But I think we need to use our experience and the history that we have established and the information that we've collected throughout the past few years prior to the trust to inform their decisions. And if they choose not to follow our advice, that's something that we'll have to deal with when it comes. But at this point, we haven't really offered any recommendations or advice to the trust as to what that project should look like, and perhaps we should.
And you're saying from our own committee, not from the community at large. Who's speaking to the community at large, I guess is my question.
No, that's what I mean. I think we should be. I think that's our role. I think our role is, we decided was to educate and to, the words are escaping me at the moment, but I'm sure Frank can remind me. But no, I think it's our role to engage and decide what's necessary. I mean, we still need to get back to the idea of, what our needs study says and perhaps what the community wants. I don't think that those are the same things. And we're supposed to be using our study as a guide or a goal, that established goals, which we have progressed towards. But there is certainly during the first community meeting, there was a call for family housing, which isn't really the primary focus of that study. So I'm not saying I know how to do it. I'm just saying that we need to start having the conversations and figure it out.
Well, that's what we're trying to do today. And I think this is this is what our goal is to figure out what is the conversation. And I feel like I put George sort of in the middle here. He's got to please both groups. And I think we need to be the conduit, but I don't think.
Sorry, or neither.
Or neither.
Yeah.
Neither. What are you? Okay, what would you want to be, George? I just see that, we asked you that. It's really hard for you to know who to answer to, I think. Marcia?
Yeah, and again, I'm not sure. It was the trust that hosted the meeting with the neighbors, right?
Yes.
Okay, so is there a community engagement process for this project which delineates who's taking the lead for what? Because what you don't want is the trust have their meetings, the housing committee have separate meetings involving the community, that going in different directions. It seems to me there needs to be one community engagement process that says the trust talks with the neighbors, the committee talks with whoever or whoever does what, and decide that before we take the next step. Shouldn't that be
Yeah.
clear?
And yeah, Marcia, I think you're exactly right. The issue is we've never done this before with
Right,
the two
right.
organizations. And I think the committee is even more, is having additional difficulties because we didn't meet from February until August. So a lot of this happened
Got it.
when we weren't allowed to meet because of COVID. So,
Understand.
it's nobody's fault. I mean, I was the chair. It's my fault if it's anybody's that,
No,
we're not where we
no,
need
I
to be.
wasn't trying to do fault. No, no.
But that's what I mean. This is all new, and I think you're exactly right. I think we need to establish roles and everybody's contributions, and I think it should be a combined effort. And we don't want to duplicate efforts either, so that's all.
I
I
would
think
think that there's some advantage, to the committee not being the owner of the property, that basically it's the committee's responsibility to tie back to the needs and what the community is saying in the broader sense and says, this is how it should be applied to this site, or the site really works for this group, but not that group. And that's a site decision rather than a community needs decision. So it seems to me if you're delineating it, the committee is talking about the broader community needs and how this might fit in, but it's the trust that has to decide, we have this acreage, this density, this zoning, this planning process, and this financial situation. So we're going to take your needs recommendations, apply it to this site, and then we'll put out an RFP that says this is what we want.
we're really glad you've joined our committee, Marcia. I think, what has really happened, because the COVID is one thing, not meeting, but all these properties came up at a sort of a very small window of time. And the committee.
You guys are really lucky. You've
We
got
are lucky.
wonderful projects to do.
I know, we've been looking for years and looking for something. Now we've got more than we can handle. But I just lost my train of thought. Shoot. But the problem is the community, because of the way things have been done, and not done, just how they've happened, is that the community knows about all the sites. I mean, that's because it's open and people know all the possibilities here, but they have no real idea of what's going to happen at any of those sites. And I think that's what you're trying to say, is that, I mean, most everything's been done by the newspaper, in terms of the newspaper providing the information from whoever knows what they're talking about. Fran?
I think we're in a tough spot because we did the housing study in 2017. It's only 3 years later. I don't think the data will have changed significantly, but I think the community, what the community is publicly saying they want, which is family housing for town employees, police, fire, et cetera, is not what our study addressed. And so if we go out and talk with the community about what they see as the needs, they may come up with different needs, which is in somewhat different conflict with our study, which says this is what your community needs according to this data collection. So I think we walk a fine line here. And I won't say more because I think that that's going to need a lot of conversation along the way.
I think that has come out clear. We had that meeting with the finance committee and some of the questions that they asked. I think everybody sort of, and then Lynn's first question was, is your study out of date? And I didn't feel that it was at all. I think it has a lot of information there. Plus it has a really good section on community engagement. From page 85 on, there's really good information in our study that I think could really inform our discussion of how we want to go about this. I think somebody's already put the effort into how to do it, and it's just a question of which things we want to do first. So I would ask everybody to all this is good, but this is part of the process. We just need, we need probably 2 process meetings at least in terms of, you know, the things that we've all been thinking, we haven't actually said to each other. So I think it's really important. We've got to go through this. It's sort of up and down a little bit here, but we're talking about one topic and it gets us to another. But I think in the end, it's going to get us to crystallize our ideas. At least I'm hoping that way. Do you want to go back to let George finish a little bit on the building permit fees from Mike Ford?
Yeah,
that-
glad to. I just signed back in. I'm sorry I missed the tail end of the discussion.
It was really important,
I
sorry.
think I got the gist of it though, and I'm
Just
a little
kidding.
confused.
We're all confused, we're processing right now.
We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna have a better way forward than any other town in the Commonwealth. That's the goal here.
Thank you.
So with regard to permit fees and the ability to, you know, when people put in $1 million house, we want to charge them a little extra because they just made the town more unaffordable. Perfectly laudable goal. I gave you a copy of town council's response to the question. He did some research on it. It's not the first time this question has come up in the Commonwealth. Essentially, Mike Ford said you cannot impose what is, even though you call it a large house fee, it's still a tax. In order to impose a new tax, you need to have legislation from the State House. He did, however, provide a couple of examples from Everett and Somerville of towns that have authorized to impose an affordable housing linkage fee. And I read those. I don't know if you got them. I apologize. I didn't send them until late in the day. I wanted to be able to refer to them. This linkage fee law does require the legislation. I couldn't exactly see how it worked because I think there's like a bylaw that gets adopted once the legislation authorizes. I'm sorry, Andrea, you're talking, but you're muted. I'll say, okay. So, the short answer is we need legislation to enact such a fee. I guess the good thing is a couple of cities around Boston have done so. So if we can make a similar kind of case, maybe we have a chance to as the town gets more, I don't even want to call it gentrified, it's the wrong term, but as the shoreline is developed with larger houses, perhaps we can leverage that into some resources that would help us to provide affordable housing. That's the hope, right?
So George, do you know if any municipality has succeeded in getting this special purpose legislation?
I only know that, was it Nantucket and, well, Boston doesn't count, right? They're
Yeah,
different.
yeah, right.
They're a different animal than we are, much larger.
Bill did.
I don't know if
That was the one
Nantucket
that
got
got
it through. Does any,
Shelley?
Yeah, it said on the bottom of your document that it was passed for Somerville.
Oh, for Somerville.
right. That was the housing linkage fee. Yeah.
Right. That's the
Right.
only one that we
I'm
know.
looking at the Nantucket one. It doesn't indicate that ever passed.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No, I see what Shelley says. It says Everett and Somerville have been authorized. So those are the two that got authorization.
Also, I missed that.
Yeah, and those authorizations, the act themselves, if you read it, it's pretty short, and it's a generalized authority for the city to enact a bylaw that would link certain types of development with paying a fee for housing purposes, and it doesn't go in the general fund. That's a nice thing. Would go into a housing trust. So I can do some more research and follow up as to how this would be put together. I don't know the likelihood of a town with demographics like Orleans being accepted, but we can follow it up until we run into a no. See how far we get with it, because it sure is a painless way from the residents' perspective of raising some resources.
So let me understand just generally, George, the process. So you work with your representative and to introduce legislation? Is that how generally it works?
The process is there would have to be a town meeting article that authorizes the Board of Selectmen to petition the legislature for a special act that pertains only to Orleans. There's been some regional discussions about doing this on a Barnstable County-wide basis. You might say that the Upper Cape has a really different demographic than the Lower Cape,
Right.
and so I don't know how if you'd have the political will to do that. And of course, there are some interest groups that don't want to see any impediment to the free flow of construction dollars into large houses. So you face these things. But that's the process. So you'd have to convince the Board of Selectmen that they want to put an article on the town meeting floor to authorize a petition.
Okay.
So what would you like me to do?
I'd be in favor of continuing to explore that option. I don't see why not. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I would be in favor of looking at what this affordable housing linkage fee is and how is it different from what the Nantucket and the other town, Barnstable, where they ran into a sort of dead end in the legislature, but this affordable housing linkage fee sounds like it's a little different. I'd like you to pursue that if you would.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and
Certainly the successful ones would be.
yeah, Somerville looks like it passed in 2005, so it's been around for a few years, and maybe check and wonder from them how it's been working. The Everett one looks like it was 2017, so they both have been approved for a few years. Be interested to see how effective they've been.
Yeah, but Nantucket was 2015 and hasn't been passed yet. So
It hasn't been passed, right?
as far as I can tell, I
Right.
would be interested to know what the difference is and
Right.
why one was
Yeah.
more successful than the other.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the representative that brought it to the floor. Who knows?
Right.
Yeah, it was a stormy night in the legislature. Nobody was there. There it went. It happened right there.
But I think the Nantucket one goes after more what we originally had in mind, which is like a payment by the seller to help with affordable housing, whereas the linkage fee has a little different, it's a little closer to a fee for service kind of thing, because it has more to do with the services that are therefore needed in the town.
Mhm.
And if we can figure out how, multi-million-dollar houses are requiring more of the town, maybe we can go with that
Mhm.
angle. But
Mhm.
in my mind, that was the difference, that one was more of just a charge on the sale price, which is more what Nantucket's talking about, and the Somerville one is really more of a fee for service kind of thing.
So Nancy, if I may, this is a really big topic, and we will need at least a whole meeting or two to go through the material and understand it. And then once we understand it and kind of see what the boundaries are, that's when this committee can decide whether you want to make a request to the select board to move it further. Ultimately, it is their call. It's not yours to decide on town meeting articles of this type.
All right, so I'll put this on for future agenda items, not next month, because I think we have something much more we need to deal with sooner, which is our community engagement, but we'll put that on, maybe working toward the May meeting or something like that.
Right, okay.
Does that sound good? All right. Thank you for your work on that, George. Okay. All right. I just wanted to get a moment, just in case you had any comments on the Finance Committee meeting or anything that came up during that. I highlighted a couple of questions that they came up with that might be helpful to us as we go forward in our community engagement information kind of questions that they had. Do you want to, does anyone want to say anything, or do you want to? Let me just say that one of the questions that came up during the little discussion that we had at the end, which we sort of answered a lot of these, but I think in terms of the future, they might be helpful. One was who oversees the recertification for affordable housing units. There seemed to be a lot of question on how that works and everything. And I think that might be something that could make people feel calmer, if they knew some more about that. What is the need? That question came up, what is the need? And we couldn't really, we have in our, anybody who's read a newspaper knows there's a need, but still, what is the need? But I was sort of curious because our answer was, well, we know what the study says and we know what people say and we have a lot of anecdotal information. But I contacted Charlie Price at Penrose and I asked him these questions and I was sort of blown away by these answers. So my question was, is the occupancy level for each AMI level full at Nossick Village? Yes. Are there any available units? No. What is the percentage of renters coming from Cape versus off Cape? And that, let me make sure I don't say the wrong thing. Of the 65 units rented, 54 were rented to people on Cape Cod. I think that's a super information piece. The other piece that I've been talking to people who are living in affordable housing lately. I've just had opportunities to talk to them. And many people said that one of they thought was something that really helped an affordable housing unit was to have a management person on site, having somebody on site. And it made a difference. In fact, this person that I was talking to has lived in 3 different ones in the course of her life. And that was one of the key figures. I'm not talking maybe about a 10 unit, but I'm talking about a larger unit one being on site. And they have a management office on site for Penrose. And the last question I said, do you have a wait list? Are you ready for this one? According to Karen, I have 222 applicants on the wait list, of which 26 are not from Cape Towns. I'm telling you, those numbers, I think, are just, they tell us the story in terms of, what we already know, but those numbers I thought were pretty impressive. So.
Nancy, thanks for calling him and getting those numbers. I think you're right. I think they do say something, but I'm also wondering why our needs study doesn't answer the needs question.
I'm sorry, what? It does answer the need, it does, but I think to people it doesn't, because it's like numbers. It's not actual people looking for houses. I
They
think
haven't read it,
to us it does. Well, nobody's
don't
really
think
read
they're
it. I mean,
aware
we
of it.
tried to do a couple of, so, and we pull out the 100 units and that's sort of a recommendation, but what are those 100 units and how could they formulate themselves? That's their recommendation. I think the 100 units is probably real. Whether they're going to be all rentals, more rentals than homes, I don't know, more families, but that's what we have to we have to pull it apart, I think, and we have to read it ourselves again and really see what really leads us to the next step,
Well, I think the 100 units was a goal. I don't think that meant the need would be fulfilled by that 100 units. I think the need is bigger than that, but.
Yes, Shelley.
Since I wasn't around when the study was done, who participated in the study? Was it current residents of Orleans or people who work in Orleans or people who want to live in Orleans? Where do we pull those responders from?
Can I jump in on that?
I wish you would.
It was a 2017 study. It was actually done in 2016.
Mhm.
And it was done by Karen Sunnerborg Associates. She has done 50 housing studies or community housing plans, production plans plus in the state. So there's a formulaic way that these things are done. She looked at the residential population, used data demographics right out of community housing survey. Tried not to rely on older U.S. Federal census information, but it was the best contemporary data available as to incomes, family size, housing types, levels of housing, and I mean it determined that some ridiculous number, like almost 30% of Orleans households, are cost stressed for housing. There is no doubt there's enormous need. I think when the quote that the ridiculous number that Nancy came up with 226 people on the wait list, just shows you how many people are actively searching today.
Yeah.
And so I think both figures are really pretty compelling.
Right. Oh, I think our study is good. I think it's an excellent basis for us to go, and I think we need to dig back in and find out what gems are in there that we can start making we don't have to write it from now. We can take what's good in there. It's sort of like a research project. Go in there, find out what you think is really a kernel that we could use to explain what the situation is and get people on our side of trying to get more and then go from there. I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel here. I think we've got it. We're just pulling it out and together to make it digestible, quick, to the point, and, you know, so we can move on. So, any other comments, Masha?
And I'll just ask the question, but I don't expect an answer. Where did the 100 units come from, that number?
From,
That was the recommended goal in the study.
Yeah,
From the
but
study.
on what basis did they come up with, or did somebody come up with 100?
It was a 10-year goal and it was broken up based on the needs that were established throughout the study. So I think
But that
it was,
was meet the need, wasn't it?
no, I think the purpose was to establish a reasonable goal that could be reached to, you know, put things in perspective. I don't think there's any indication that the 100 units would satisfy the need.
Okay, so it really is,
we shouldn't
I
be
would say it's not a
using that.
long-term goal, it's sort of an immediate strategic or
Yes.
tactical goal kind of thing.
That's a good point. That's a good point to differentiate. It doesn't really reflect the need at all.
Right, okay, I just need to,
Nancy, if I could add to Marcia's question, George, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was also crafted understanding density as in the zoning as written at that time. for
the
the
development
potential.
capacity, yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. And the basic proposal was, you know, 100 units over 10 years, 85% of them being rentals. So we're working hard on the rentals because the ownership units are going to fall in our laps with very little effort because they're so much easier to build.
Right.
Um,
Any other comments on that? Okay. Okay, now we get to the hard part. Community engagement discussion, which we've already had quite a bit of, but the things that have come up in the last few meetings and have been types of housing. Types of housing is huge, you know, mixed housing, what kind of housing we recommend. I think we have to do something on that topic. How we afford it is not really our problem, so we don't have to worry about that particularly. That'll come up, but that's not really what we have to do. Although I do think that in that 107 Main Street discussion in the community, that came up on what other ways to fund the affordable housing besides town money by getting some kind of a group of friends of affordable housing. And that came up also with the finance committee, other ways to get contributions to the housing committee that were individual versus tax-based. So I think that's another piece that, you know, somebody else can figure out how to get that done. But I think maybe getting that message out might be something that people can relate to as well. So I think those are the kind of things that have come up over the time. So
I'm sorry, Nancy, I guess I'm just looking for a better understanding of what the conversation is. Is this how we're gonna, the topics about community engagement for the 107 property specifically?
no, just because these are the things that people are talking about. I mean, when we talk to the community, always put out a newspaper article, people start talking about it. So these are the questions that people ask. So I think it's our job to go back and see if we can craft answers to some of these questions. But we're not going to just go out and say we need affordable housing in the town of Orleans. We need to find out what the questions are to some degree, and we've had questions already. And I think that we know some of the questions that could get us started, and then maybe engage some other people. And the other piece is who else to include in the town. Going back to Andrea's point, who else do we include in this? Do we just do this ourselves, or do we try to involve other groups in the town? Or do we, I mean, those are the questions. I don't have the answers, but I think we have to I'd like to just do a brainstorm. If you could just, I wish I had like a chart and a thing. I wish you would just say something that you think is important and any of those topics, because we're not going to do this today. It's not going to be done on Zoom today. It's going to take some writing down, but I put down topics, plan, process. And we've mentioned all these things in our discussion coming up to there. So I sort of just, I really am a brainstorm person. I really like brainstorming because I think it does help us. So even though we're on Zoom, I think we could try that. And we just put down phrases or things that we think might be important if we were going to establish a community engagement process. questions, topics would you think we need to talk about right now? And then maybe we can start pulling it together. So brainstorm.
In an effort to sort of frame the conversation, I think we have a need study, right? And I think we've all sort of agreed that the data hasn't really changed all that much, but what we're lacking might be input from the community on what they want or what they aspire for. And I mean, the only way I know to do that, short of a community meeting, is a survey, and getting a survey out to our residents and asking what they would like to see in their affordable housing. And then, you know, maybe evaluating those and looking at how they work in conjunction with the needs. But I really hesitate to abandon our needs study. I mean, that's,
Oh, no.
we had that put together to guide us through this process. And
No one
think
is
that's
asking,
really
we're not saying we're going to get rid of the need study. I think we all need to read it again. I'm sorry to say that it's an assignment. We got to go deep back into it because it's a lot of good stuff in there. So, Fran.
Going back to your brainstorming idea, we have our needs study, but we haven't talked about, as you said, types of housing, size of developments, mixed income or all affordable, design concepts, where would we want them placed, in what parts of town, and what type in what parts of town. Those are things that come up to me immediately. That is a discussion that we need to have before we go out into the community, to have some idea about what our thoughts are about these things that can align with our housing study, and then be able to ask the community their thoughts. We already have a community plan. Andrea, help me.
Comprehensive plan.
You could
overall community.
fit it into the post-sewer Orleans, or the comprehensive plan, Fran.
Comprehensive plan and post-sewer plan. So there are all of those things. What does the comprehensive plan say? What does the post-sewer plan say? What are all of those things that we can talk about that align with the needs study that we already have?
And just a correction, there is no one document that's a post-sewer plan. I see George's brow furrowing on that one, but it could come about with these different committees coming together for workshops, roundtables. It's a way to start that process.
Well, we have an opportunity here because we have the Governor Prince property that we are going to be looking at, not only as the trust and the committee, but also as a town.
Mhm.
So we have an opportunity to begin some of these conversations in the context of that particular outreach.
Marcia, did you have something?
Yeah,
I'm not commenting. This is supposed to be brainstorming. I'm just writing it all down without comments. That's what brainstorming is. So Marcia.
Okay. What I was, first I had some reaction to it. It seems to me, since you've done the study, and I think it's a great study, but it yields obviously huge needs. And what I don't quite see in the study, but I haven't read every page, is the projection into the future, other than continuation of current trends. So that's something that still has to be talked through. But given the input from the neighbors that I listened to, and given the current of the discussion yet to happen on Governor Prince, it seems to me there's some need for engagement around the topic of short-term, meaning 5 years, maybe 10, priorities. So with the categories that Fran talks about, is it family? Is it, couples, elderly, some locational considerations, although you're not going to necessarily have any pick you want, but some within that broad needs array, which is huge, what are the relative priorities given short-term trends, something like that, that turns that big picture into a more focused series of, maybe you can take the 100 and do something with the 100, Although you know, when I was working at Arlington, we had a 360 per year production, and even though that was good to fuel production, it didn't relate to the ultimate need. So we went back and looked at needs, and we came up with a number related to the need, which turned out to be bigger than 360. But at least it was oriented to some sort of future vision. And if, you know, we tied it to a level of diversity, socioeconomic diversity that we wanted to see. And in order to do that, we needed to produce more large family units. We needed to produce worker units near transit, you know, those kinds of things that provide sort of parameters for short-term priorities. So maybe that's something you can engage in. I will say though, because I've been involved in a lot of community engagement process, it's different. I really wouldn't ask at this point, given all the work you have, what do you want? Because everybody will want whatever they want. It's given our needs and given our situation and given our short-term projections for economics, what do you think we should place most of our efforts in? And you'll find some people who say workforce housing, who'll say family housing, and others that say growing senior population, they need more seniors or whatever, but the relative priorities. So therefore you don't say something is not a need, you just say it's a relative priority of immediate, midterm and long-term, or however you want to distinguish that, rather than ask, what do you think, what do you want? It's how would you place these relative priorities? Or you might even put them out in a proposed relative priority and say, where would you change this? Because I think it's easier for people to reconfigure something than to come up with, what do you want? They'll come up with something that doesn't fit into the needs study, and then what are you going to do with it, kind of thing.
I like that. No
Wonderful.
comment, but I like that.
Wonderful.
Bill, did you have something? Bill,
No,
did you?
kind of processing it all. I think Fran's ideas were excellent. And I think what your reference before about us going back and looking at that need study to see what we could pull out and highlight, specifically when we start talking about, you know, the community discussion. And there's so much in there. And as you say, from the questions that the finance committee had, there are answers in there, but I think we need to go through that and, you know, and I agree with you. I think brainstorming is great. And I wish we could do this in a room, like you said, with a whiteboard and just throw all these things out there. But, you know, using the types of things that Fran mentioned and see if there's already some of that in that study that we could expand upon to develop, you know, the process, because then, you know, that's going to be the ultimate is how do we do this without creating a whole new needs study, specifically based on what we already know. What can we provide to the public or ask of the public? So there's really a lot to think about is how we're going to go forward here. But they're all, you know, they're all excellent.
I just lost you. Any other brainstorming ideas? Anybody else need to add? Those are some good ones. No more? Everybody's done. Andrea, I had a question for you, but you speak first.
Well, it was just interesting. I had an interesting question come in, and it was about, George, it was about the 107 Main presentation, and you'll be able to guess who it was from, but somebody said, why didn't George put the snow house up there? Because if he had put the snow house if he had chosen the snow house as the picture, I'd be campaigning to build that structure now as the answer to all of our, you know, just get it built right there in that location. So I think part of your challenge maybe is not just restating in text, but selling something that people want to buy. And the more you can make it visual and translate that the density of the needs study to things that are people can visualize, and they'll say, you have to do it. You know what I mean? You want to flip you've heard pushback from the planning board and the finance committee, and it's been like, justify yourselves. And I think that the advocacy piece is about tell the story in such a way that people demand that it be done. If you can make that leap, and pictures will help tell the story.
I like that. I'm gonna write that down. Tell the story so people will demand it.
Yeah, marketing 101.
Right. Well, George and I have had this conversation. We all probably have thought this. One thing about affordable housing is everybody's for it until it's next door. And that's one of the things that, so even a survey, you say, oh, sure, I'd like this, this, and this. Yeah, but I tell you where I don't want it is next door. And so that's, I'm speaking for other people, not myself, but I think that is the real reality of this. And we do have to tell our stories so that it is convincing.
But can I actually just offer a small playbook on that? And because Arlington, I know, won awards recently from Main Street Design, Main Street USA in terms of development, but Shaker Heights, Ohio had embedded affordable and special needs units in neighborhoods. And you drive down the street or walk down the street and because of the quality of the housing, you would never be able to pick out which of those housing units, because they all were variations on single family homes. And again, it's a city with 30,000 people, but they embedded housing, and it didn't take real estate value down. They did it very differently, and they didn't isolate populations, they embedded populations. And I think if you sell this, one of the things you've heard about, not in my town, is not only about perceived strangers, but it's the effect on resale and real estate value. And if you can untangle that in your advocacy, that takes a huge piece out of the push against.
Yesterday, Alan and I drove up to Brackett Landing in Eastham. I don't know if you all know that or not, but it is a private development. It's a 40B. So it's 25% affordable and 75% market. And the design is such that you cannot tell which are the affordable units and which are the market units. And it's really a stunning development. And I just think that we need to set our sights on doing something. I mean, we're not private developers on the one hand, but we can ask for things because we are helping support developers. And I think that to be able to embed our affordable housing in the community and in neighborhoods has got to be one of our top priorities. Talk about long-term and short-term goals. I'm really very strong on that for our goals, long-term and short-term.
Marcia?
I will say from my experience, we've been in situations in which we had to sell the issue of market value. And even when we could prove market value wouldn't go down, by itself, that doesn't say, oh, in that case, move them next to me. But I think what you're right is a picture. What is this going to look like? Which is why when you do planning with neighborhoods, if they're involved in the design process and see how you came up with your design, that's what really sells them. So I do agree that you need to, and there certainly are exceptions. So if you put a Pruitt Igoe in the middle of Orleans, obviously it's going to bring down property values, but almost never does a single project bring down property values. But it's not a matter of convincing people that up front. They either won't believe you or they don't care. So I think it really is the engagement process and giving them the pictures of housing just like ours is what you're going to get. And actually, though, you have to be careful because sometimes it's not just like ours. It doesn't look like a single family house surrounded by woods, but it is a reasonable design. It's an asset to the community, all these other kinds of things.
Nancy, can I ask you as a committee one thing? There's a whole, we've talked about it ad nauseum potentially, but I don't think the community understands missing middle housing. And it's come up with the planning board in terms of respecting zoning. We have the village center, and then we have limited business, and then we have general, and we're ringed by neighborhoods. But that first neighborhood on Old Colony Way has a very different density and feel. So, you know, just doing a public outreach in material you already have. I mean, the whole discussion of doing a workshop or just some kind of presentation on missing middle housing and the housing styles without even tying it to any project. So it's no threat. But I think there are educational pieces here about design and impact that you could be the soft sell just to open people's minds. That there are educational value in you leading conversations that have kind of let people envision what that means.
Thank you. Well, in my open meeting law, can I type this list up and send it out? Is that a discussion or is that information? I don't, can I write down this list of topics that we came up with and send it out? Yes?
Absolutely, but don't ask for a comment on it until the
No
public meeting.
comments. Anything I send you, do not comment on. I went to the meeting, but it's just, but I think we should need to sort of see what we all said and sort of write it, look at it and process it, see what you can find. I'm going to have to, I feel like I'm back to my teaching days. I'm going to give you an assignment. I'm going to send down these ideas and I would like you to open up your housing study and see if you can find a page to reference it somewhere in the housing study. Because I do not want to rewrite this whole thing. I don't think we have to. I think between the stuff that we got from the housing institutes, go back, we have that book too as well. And I think we have the information. It's just a tedious activity that I think in the end will help us engage not only the community, but I think other committees. I don't think we can meet with other committees, like say the planning board, because I understand the thing that nobody's used it yet. But at the same time, everybody's waiting for this big moment when the sewers come and everything's going to happen and then it won't be there. So I think that these are things that, you know, we have to engage the other committees, but until we're able to engage ourselves, I don't think we can talk about it. So
just a mechanical thing, I believe that if committee members have comments and they only address their email back to you, you are okay in terms of sunshine laws.
okay, I think that's true. You just can't talk to anybody. You can't engage.
Well,
Don't do threads.
I would, if I may, I would just be very conservative in that regard.
Yeah.
I don't really want to discuss it right now, but I think we just, I think what you said is some good points and you may not have all been writing them down at the same time. So I think there's something to think of, but basically it's a homework assignment. It isn't even any fun, but the fun of it will be if we can do it and then present it to the community, that will be the fun part. So you just got to sort of get through the slough of going through the work. And then we will be able to do what we want to do, which is what everybody seems to want to say is, let's just share the good news that we have. It is good news. And I think we should think about it that way. And I think it'd be received that way if we can present it that way. So.
Nancy, but I agree, and I thank you for the assignment. Maybe something to think about going forward is either a special meeting of our committee or one of our agendas that is pretty much has the only thing on it is, you know, what we've talked about the last half of this meeting. So we could concentrate on it. Just a suggestion going forward,
Do you
maybe.
want to do that for the next meeting? I mean, we won't be done, but I think if we don't jump in, it's not ever going to happen because we have been talking about this a while and the time is right for this. It's so right that we can't really miss it. So my idea, I think to follow up on Bill's is let's do it in November. As far as if we're not doing anything for community preservation, I mean, that doesn't take long if we do that, right? So we can do that for the November 3rd meeting if you want to. It doesn't have to be finished, but it has to be started, okay? I think that's all we have to say.
I
Raise
think,
your hand if you think that's a good idea. No, okay, everybody's all right with that?
yeah, and I would keep the agenda as limited as you can to that. As you said, there may be a couple other things, but I agree 100%. It's a very needed topic. It's one we've spent a lot of energy on today and great ideas. So let's keep that going and not put it off. Yeah.
And to go along with what Fran said before, Governor Prince, that is our opportunity to try it out. And I think that we need to be loaded and ready when the opportunity comes. And I think that that's another motivator for us to do that too. All right, it's almost 6 o'clock. I'm sorry, this went longer than I thought, but I think it was useful. We have future agenda topics right now, which is George had been talking about before with the linkage fees and this project. I think that's enough for right now. Does anyone else have any other agenda topics they would like, Marcia?
Well, the question is, one thing that does seem we need to do, and it doesn't have to be by next month, I suppose, is that citizen engagement process with the Housing Trust around 107 Main. Just that if that starts, we need to be all on the same page. So I don't know how that gets going. I don't know if the trust needs to set out a outline of a process, we need to do it, or what. But it seems to me there needs to be agreement on that engagement process starting out.
Fran?
Is there another meeting with the residents scheduled, George, or how have you left it with the neighbors?
Nothing's been scheduled until after the trust meets on the 20th. So with regard to, how we go about this, it'd be really good to have a Affordable Housing Committee representative to kind of talk about your willingness to participate and see, what the trust really needs. I don't know how much they want to move this along on their own and how much they need someone else to do it.
And how do we do that?
Well, I'm happy to ask that it be put on the trust agenda as far as what we want to do. But Nancy, I think really the best way to move it along quicker is for you to just send an email over to Alan and indicate our willingness to do this work and see what he says, as opposed to waiting 2 weeks for me to bringing it up at the meeting. My impression is I think that they would welcome our recommendations.
We might even
for
consider,
the trust.
maybe they would invite us to have a joint meeting with them. Because I do think it's going to be something that's got to move along here.
I really think rather than having a joint meeting to put more people into the conversation, I think it would be better for us to come up with a plan and see if they would like it to implement it. I don't know how you guys feel, but the meetings that have been joint meetings, especially when we had the Board of Selectmen, there's a lot of people trying to talk about a lot of things and it doesn't seem to really go anywhere. So that's just my impression. Obviously it's up to you, Nancy, how you want to handle it, but I think establishing a plan, presenting it to them, seeing if they want us to move forward might be more efficient.
Well, let me clarify that in terms of a plan. You're talking about a plan for 107 Main Street, not our general community engagement plan process.
Yeah, I think we can utilize 107 Main Street to try kind of establish what the guidelines are going to be going forward.
I would normally agree with you, Katie, except the trust has already started the engagement process with the neighbors. So it's in process already, and George is very much engaged with, if I understand correctly, with the neighbors in conversation. So I think that we need to be informed about where that is, and I'm not sure that we can have them start from ground zero since it's already in process.
Yeah, and I don't know that we'd be starting from ground zero. Certainly, there were some committee members that were on that call. I wasn't one of them, but
Yeah.
again, all the more reason to start this conversation with Alan to try to get an idea in process instead of sort of inviting everybody into the conversation at the onset. But I agree. I think the conversation has started, so I'd rather pick up where we are than start it all over for sure.
Nancy, if I may, I just have to say, I am completely open to whatever process will result in good housing for the town, because I left only the trust met with the neighbors, and there was probably 15 people on the call total. And that was the Affordable Housing Trust, because I didn't want to overwhelm the neighbors with 20 people, ganging up on them, and that, because that's not the purpose. But I don't know if you do no homework on a property before you start talking about it with neighbors, then you haven't done your homework. If you do a spend $20,000 on a nice concept plan for the property, then it's a done deal. So, you know, that's sort of the negative view that I often am on the receiving end of. And so if there is a more positive process that is more cooperative with neighbors, but understanding of that the town has needs to maximize the efficiency of its resources in the housing that's built. And if you guys have any suggestions on those, I am glad to hear them.
It seems to me that you've had feedback from the neighbors. We don't know what that is particularly. And it seems to me that we're at the point where you take the neighbors' feedback and see how it fits or doesn't fit with what you've already come up with in your theoretical scheme.
Can you
And
share that
then we
with
have
us,
to
George?
decide what's affordable. So that's seems to me where we are at this point.
That's the next step.
And what I was talking about is actually not the neighbors, because it seems to me the trust has started the conversation with the neighbors and we don't get in the middle of that. We might attend, but not get in the middle of that. But is there anything more in the broader community? Is there an advocacy role about the need for housing and how that ties to the housing study? So it's really the broader thing that I was thinking about, because it would seem to me that's where the Affordable Housing Committee could serve a particularly good role, not getting involved with the neighbors per se, but what's the broader process? Or is there not a broader process? Is it basically the trust needs to come to a resolution on what the outlines of the process is, talk to the neighbors, and then put out the RFP? But then there needs to be a process. So it's really starting from now, how is the community in all its aspects involved until final decisions are made? That's what I was talking about. I really don't think this group needs to intervene in any way in the process with the neighbors. I think that will just confuse the hell out of everybody.
Right.
And I think, you know, looking back with 2020 hindsight, we wish we'd had a process prior to this happening, but we didn't. So I think that I agree sort of that we need to, for the next thing or for the future things, we have to have more of an input in the beginning. But it would be interesting, George, are you going to go, you said you were going to share those requests with the trust on October 20th?
Yes, they will all be full public record on that date. Yes.
All right, so we'd be able to see them in writing too, because I
Yes.
think it would help us not for discussion purposes in terms of the questions we just asked in our, what kind of things do people want? We just listed 10, 15 things that we need to know. And those are real people with a real situation that we could really use in helping us make our decisions, even if we don't have a direct impact on talking to these people. We're using the information that they, one of the things that came out of that meeting on 107 was everybody's looking at that process, that project from the front, how it's going to improve Main Street. Nobody thought to look at it from the back until somebody on that street asked what it looked like from the back. So I think that those are kind of things that, you know, I'm sure it'll be fine from the back, but you know, that was their concern. So, you know, I think
Actually, Nancy, could I jump in for a second? I'm sorry, but one of the reasons you don't want just one meeting with the neighborhood. And so you just raised two critical things. In the design guidelines for the town, we have a mention of that projects need to be developed on all four sides. And you're touching on so much right now. So, and you're just building the playbook, so to speak. You're building it here, but even that meeting, I had some phone calls after that meeting, complaints from people who are living full-time on the street that most of the people who spoke during that meeting don't even live on the street, that they were representing second home ownership or rental ownership. And so that also tells you that your outreach needs to be more than one time, and that if you guys think of yourselves, George, forgive me and correct me, but if you develop something that's as clear as like a site plan review process, meaning that form of step, when new projects come to town, they always meet with site plan review, and site plan review, they know what they have to pass to kind of get through. Not that you become site plan review, but if you can develop the kind of playbook of what a developer should be able to answer about a project, then when you get to that and you develop the steps of the process, then the trust can fly with the methodology and we can adopt the methodology based on your recommendations. But you've got to go through enough of these to be able to pick out each time you meet with these groups, what are you learning from creating the process? Do you know what I mean? We know now if you meet with them one time that you won't really get all the neighbors there. You may get a slanted view of what the questions are.
Okay, let's just wrap this discussion up because we've been everywhere now.
Mhm.
First, we were going to talk to Alan about it. Then we were going to recommend that we have an opinion. Then we're not going to talk to Alan about it. We're going to let them take it from here. So can we make a decision here in terms of our next step? Because there's like 4 different ideas on the table. How many, can we make a it's not really a motion. I'm trying, the
What
more
would
I
you
listen, the less I
suggest,
want to
Nancy?
get involved in this. What?
What would you suggest we do?
Just be the leader.
No, I mean, are you willing to talk to Alan? Do you, I mean,
I have 2.
how do you?
I have, I'm hearing both sides. I'm feeling this. I think that question of stepping in the middle of this is not probably the best idea. I think we could learn from this for future, or maybe, but I think, and we could develop something from this, but I don't really, I don't see,
Are you suggesting that we don't take a role in the 107 RFP because we?
no,
weren't
I
in it
don't.
from
I
the
do
outset?
want to take a role in that. I'd like to see the information that they got back from the people to see how far it really is. I'd like to know what they're going to talk about the next time they get together and those pieces. And I think I could call up and ask about that, I suppose, just for information.
Yeah,
I
I
don't-
think, yeah, I think that's what we want to do is, I agree with someone that said, we're not going to jump into 107 now and try to take over the process. But I think we've learned right from the beginning that we learned a lot of information secondhand, or we haven't seen it at all. So we haven't really been involved directly in the process. And I think the fact that these questions are out there, the answers have come back, and we still don't have any inclination of what that involved. So I think it's maybe a message to Alan about what our general discussion was today about, getting involved and being more involved in the process early and maybe guiding the process in the early stages. But for 107, we feel, at least I feel, that we need to be more involved rather than just a joint meeting every now and then and learning about this is where the trust is with the process, or this is where the trust is with the RFP development. So I think our message, unless I'm hearing incorrectly, is that with 107 going forward, in some way, we'd like to be more involved in the process itself and how we may help with the process, but certainly not taking it over by any extent.
I have a recommendation. Again, I'm stepping into this not knowing prior kinds of things, but why don't Nancy, you talk to Alan, have a conversation, ask Alan how he sees the process and how he sees this committee contributing positively to the process. But at the same time, we as a committee, getting back to what Katie said earlier, what do we want out of the site? And I think we should talk about what we think is most appropriate for that site, given the needs, given what we know of it. And it would be a preliminary one that can evolve over time, and that we would like to share that idea with the trust as they move forward with whatever long-term process they're going to develop. So 2-prong. Nancy, talk to Alan about how we can help them in the process. At the same time, we, and I don't know how, Nancy, you want to organize it, talk about what we would like to see that site do vis-a-vis housing needs.
I like that. Everybody feel good about that?
Sounds good.
I think, actually, that's going to be our 2-pronged part for November. I got to put a light on my house here.
So,
I look like I'm disappearing for Halloween here.
so Nancy, please,
I-
Harper.
Um,
So Nancy, my question is, do you need me to do anything at the trust meeting on behalf of the Affordable Housing Committee with regard to 107?
I think I'll talk to Alan. I think I'll have a conversation with him to see how he sees us fitting into that. And then if there's, I can follow up with you and talk to you about that if something more needs to be done, maybe.
Okay,
I don't know. 'Cause
I'll wait to hear from
I don't know what the conversation will be in terms of that. And I think, so, but I think going back to Marcia's point, in November, when we do our assignment of looking at the study guide, we also need to think about what we want from 107 Main Street, so we can have a position. And then we can maybe take a motion and present it in what we really think. I think everybody who was part of that was really excited about the idea. And I think we all got so excited that we just thought it was so good that everybody would love it. And I think we forgot to realize that maybe there was something more to be talked about. So can we just approve 2 minutes in the meetings, then we can adjourn this meeting? We have minutes from September 1st, our general meeting. Did not know, the executive minutes that I sent out had no information in them. They just were information that said that we had those meetings. I did not put any notes in there, but George says I should hold all those until the future. So I'll hold all those ones that I sent you the first time. So today we are just approving September 1st, our last Affordable Housing Committee. Can I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second,
Second,
Bill, Fran and Bill, all in favor? We have to do roll call for this, for minutes? No, yes. Shelley,
Yes,
Fran,
Fran McLennan, aye.
Nancy Wren, aye. Bill,
Bill Stockard, aye.
Marcia,
Marcia Algar, aye.
Rich,
Rich Kendall, aye.
Katie,
aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0, 0. And the other one that doesn't seem to have any major is the one on July 24th, which was for the Finance Committee meeting that we had a joint meeting. So we can just approve that one and get that in the way too. Motion to approve. Anybody want a motion?
I'll move.
Bill, so moved. Second. Katie. Roll call. Nancy, Ren, aye. Bill,
Bill Stockard, aye.
Marcia,
Marcia Algar, aye.
Shelley,
Shelley Dawson abstain.
abstain, thank you. Fran,
Fran McLennan, aye.
Katie,
Aye.
and Rich.
Aye.
Okay. Actually, Marcia, did you say yes? Because you weren't at that meeting.
No, should I abstain? I don't know.
Yeah, so we have 2 abstains. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can't even count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 2. Okay. All right. Any other business? Motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Bill, second. Shelley, all in favor? Can you just raise your hand? Raise your hand. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you for a really good meeting and all your input. Will be following up on this and read your book. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Nancy.
Nancy.
Aye.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
Nancy.
much.
Aye, everybody.